Hey, what's up guys? Today we'll be reviewing the Zenbook Pro Duo, a laptop that's been trending recently because of its two massive screens. There's been a few laptops that have had secondary displays before, but this one spans the entire width of the laptop, making it much more usable than just a tiny trackpad screen. From the perspective of a programmer, a gamer, and a casual user, I don't find this laptop very practical, and the sacrifices they made to get that second display might be a deal breaker for a lot of people, but for the right person, and it's a very small subset of laptop users, this could be huge. The concept itself is great, but this first iteration of their dual screen laptop definitely has a lot of room for improvement. So that's what we'll talk about today. First of all, build quality is exceptional, and I mean exceptional. It's a relatively thicker laptop, making the screen, the bottom display, and the keyboard deck very rigid with zero flex. The hinge is tuned perfectly, no screen wobble, one hand open, and great hinge tension. The surface texture they use doesn't feel like cheap plastic like their other Zenbooks. This one is much closer to a metallic feel. It's noticeably thicker and heavier than, say, a Razer Blade 15, which was surprising to me because I've always seen Zenbooks as these thin and light laptops, but this one really pushes the limits for thermals and performance, and they did a pretty good job. It's able to maintain boost clocks of 3.9 GHz on all cores, CPU at 98, and GPU at 78 degrees. This thing runs hot, but it also turbos quite high, so you get great performance, but it sits at the thermal limit to achieve it. With the screen sitting where the hottest components are, the keyboard and trackpad don't even get warm to the touch. In fact, the screen doesn't get hot either, which you can see from the thermal camera. Fans under a combined load are moderately loud, not vacuum cleaner loud. There is a button on the keyboard that enables this turbo mode, which I initially assumed would crank up the fans, but it doesn't actually seem to do anything, so you don't have any fan control whatsoever. Performance on this is also as you would expect. It's a 6-core i7-9750H RTX 2060. It pushes out some solid performance in games at 1080p. You can also configure it up to the i9, 32 gigs of RAM, and a 1TB SSD, but the RTX 2060 is the only GPU option available. I didn't manage to get inside, and there's 2 screws covered with this rubber, so upgradability is non-existent. As far as I know, there's only a 4K OLED option for this laptop, no 144Hz panel for gamers. The main display uses a Samsung 4K OLED panel, the secondary display uses a 3840 by 1100 IPS panel, not sure on the manufacturer, and this is one of the first compromises that I noticed. So the first thing, the screen is custom manufactured. Nobody uses this strange size and resolution panel, so it had to have been custom ordered by ASUS. So given that, I'm not sure why they didn't go with an OLED panel to match the top display because there's a very big difference between the two, and if you look at the display measurements, it's noticeably worse than the main display. Still good, just inconsistent across the two screens. And then the brightness control. So the brightness control only affects the main display, not the secondary display. It should just change both of them at the same time. It's just an inconvenience to have to dig through menus to adjust your second display. And then the usual thing with OLED. I recommend it for media consumption and casual games like Tomb Raider, for example. Competitive games, you'll want 144Hz, and content creation, you'll want a more consistent and accurate 4K IPS panel. But as for the use cases, just make sure whatever you have on the second screen is not something you put your focus on. It should only really be used to give you side info. The keyboard has a good layout. Switches have relatively low key travel. It's a bit tall in height, which makes it a little bit awkward to type on. They do include a wrist rest, which solves that problem for me, but it's still very difficult to use on your lap or just anywhere that doesn't have a lot of space. Didn't really have any issues typing, just could use a bit more key travel is all. The trackpad straight up sucks. It's a Windows Precision trackpad, but it's really small, the tracking isn't accurate, it skips around with fine movements. Button clicks are good, but the overall trackpad just isn't great in 2019, where most gaming laptops have very nice trackpads. This is something you naturally sacrifice by having a huge screen on the bottom. For ports, you have your power, HDMI 2.0, USB 3. On the right is another USB 3, headphone jack, and Thunderbolt 3. Really light on ports actually. Speakers are bottom mounted, they're loud, detailed, decent bass, not MacBook Pro level, but it doesn't feel empty in any of the frequencies. Overall, solid pair of speakers. There's also a 71 watt-hour battery inside that will get you a little under 3 hours of battery life with light use. Charger ends in a standard barrel plug. So I kind of already gave my conclusion on this laptop at the start, but here it is again. You gotta know what to use the second display for because there's a lot of compromises being made to the everyday usability of this thing. For example, the position of the keyboard and trackpad, the higher thermals, the short battery life, the weight and thickness, and the lack of upgradability. Okay, that is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time.